Welcome to today's episode of The Heart of the Matter. We're going to be talking about a very deep, heart-wrenching, tear-jerking even episode today. Our special guest today is Ekene Som Mekwunye. He has a harrowing story to tell. And the caption of a blog that he recently authored simply says, "The death camps that are called government hospitals in Nigeria." That says it all. So stay tuned while we wait and get into this subject. In the meantime, I'm Apuyo Forikuma, your anchor for the day. We'll be right back. So we're talking today about a blog which is captioned "The Death Camps Called Government Hospitals in Nigeria." It's a heavy, heavy, heavy topic. And we have with us Ekene. Ekene, you are a filmmaker.
Yes, sir.
You're also an MBA student at the Lagos Business School, Pan-African University.
Exactly.
And you've got a story to tell us about your late father, Peter Ezekwoli?
Ezekwoli.
Mekwunye also.
Yes.
Now, before we go into that story, tell us about him, because he passed away, I think you said in May, was it?
Yeah, May 2016.
Okay.
May 10th, actually, 2016.
What was your father like?
Wow. My father was a very fun-loving person. He loved to tell jokes, and he loved to laugh as well. He loved God. I mean, if there is anything I know of my dad, the first thing he did in the morning was talk to God. Before anything.
He was a praying man.
Oh, he was. I remember there was a day son came to the house and banging the door very early in the morning, and the first thing he did was to pray before answering the person.
So he had his priorities right too.
No. And he was one person that, I mean, he never missed words. If he told you good morning, you could be rest assured that was morning. He was. I mean, his kind was very rare. Yeah. And I find myself very privileged to have had that kind of a person as a father.
Sure. So, of course, his passing must be a real heavy loss to you, your mother, your siblings, and many other people, I'm sure.
It's beyond words, really. I can't put the words to it, really. Sure. He meant the world to all of us.
I can imagine.
You know, and to lose him. I've never had this. You know, I've never lost someone this close. So it's a whole paradigm shift for me. It's new for me. I'm just trying to get used to this, to know that this is actually real, and I have to live with this my whole life.
Well, look, may your father's gentle soul rest in perfect peace.
Amen.
And may Almighty God grant you, your mother, your siblings, and all the rest of your family the fortitude to bear this loss.
Amen.
So, it's because of him and his passing that you put together this blog with that very, I have to say, impactful title. What happened? Tell us his story.
Okay, he had some difficulty breathing.
Okay.
You know, so we took him to, or my mom actually had taken him to General Hospital Ikorodu initially, but the experience there this is another story. So when I heard I dashed down there, picked him up, and we took him to Lasut in Ikeja. And because we had heard that there was an ENT, an ear, nose, and throat specialist there, and we were like, okay, so let's go. We got there, and the experience is it's difficult to put in words, because first we were taken to the medical emergencies unit, and I couldn't believe that was a medical emergency.
Why
unit.
not?
Because, I mean, everybody there just took things. In fact, you had to be careful the way you speak to the matron if you want them to attend to you. You know, and, you know, sadly, I had sought medical assistance outside the country, and I know how some of these things are. But the thing that these guys actually took an oath to save lives it's difficult to fathom. They did things at their own pace. I understand that this is a profession where time is of essence. I mean, there are some people that, like I wrote in my, if they had up to 5 seconds, they probably would still be alive today.
Could make the difference between life and death.
Yeah, and these guys just did everything that they respond to you when they feel like responding to you. And it's, I couldn't believe it.
Okay, so take us deep into the story so all of us, our audience included, can better understand exactly why you feel this way.
Okay, so we go in, we get a bed. That was after like an hour or two. Get a bed, the doctor making the rounds comes and checks him. And he said, okay, we're going to do some tests. After a while, some guys from the ENT department come and they say, okay, we're going to have to do...
ENT is ear, nose, and throat.
Ear, nose, and throat. Okay. Our president actually made that popular recently as well. So they come and say, we're going to do a CT scan. We need to do a longoscopy. Actually, what we're trying to do is a tracheotomy where they just pass so that he starts
breathing
to breathe.
Through his,
and it's for them, it's a minor procedure. I mean, nothing much. And they're like, okay, this was a Sunday. And they're like, okay, we can't do the CT scan today. Okay, first they said, no, they can't even do the CT scan there. Then we had to go and do the CT scan elsewhere. And the doctor says that we have to go to this particular place. And I was wondering why. Well, that's another story.
When you said you're wondering why, because again, reading your blog, that was something you focused on a little bit. Were there other places that CT scans could have been done?
Lots of places around.
Okay, so you felt that where he was asked to go, it wasn't necessary?
Well, I don't know. You see, one thing I've come to realize is that these guys probably have their own reasons for doing what they are doing. But if there was someone who could do it that was close, I mean, why do we have to go that far?
Okay, look, let me tell you this. I did a bit of research into this particular topic after I read your blog, and I talked to some medical practitioners who obviously don't want to get named. But apparently, some of the labs and, I don't know, other centers pay commissions to some medical practitioners to recommend their particular clinic or diagnostic center. So I'm not saying that's what has happened here, but I'm saying that we do understand, based on what we've been told, that this does happen. So I guess the word out there is that we want to ensure that those involved, do the right thing. But please carry on with your story from the CT scan.
So we had to do that the next day. And so I got there, I got to the hospital before 7 o'clock. And they said, we have to book for an ambulance. And I was like, well, that shouldn't be a problem, because a lot of times when we get to see in the news, we see the governor commissioning lots of ambulances. Like, okay, and we're like, well, we can't get an ambulance yet because there's only one 7-whole unit. And I was like, okay, can I at least get an ambulance to come take my dad to go do this? Then they're like, no, it's hospital policy. Once he's admitted here, it has to be the ambulance from the hospital that has to take him. And to do the CT scan, especially for the nose and the throat, they were like, you don't have to eat before this. Okay. So they were waiting endlessly without eating or drinking. And we couldn't. I walked around that hospital complex.
And of course, in the meantime, you mentioned, of course, he wasn't breathing well. So
yes.
How was his respiration all this time?
And he was in pain. So they placed him under oxygen, but he was in serious pain.
Okay.
So that day passed. We could barely do anything, because by the time the ambulance came, it was even late.
Okay.
So I had to now make friends with the ambulance driver. I'm like, okay, please, can we come very early in the morning? The next morning I actually went to his office. I followed him to the emergency unit. We took him. We did the CT scan, and by 2 o'clock that day, we got back like 12. Actually 11, 12, and they had said, okay, they scheduled him for 2 o'clock for this. And, he hadn't eaten, because to do the procedure, you shouldn't eat. I was there till 8 p.m.
And they hadn't started the operation at all?
For a 68-year-old man.
Wow.
I still can remember the picture of him begging us to give him, even if it's drops of water. And we're begging him, like, please just wait, this procedure will be over.
But what were the hospital? Because I'm sure you would have been remonstrating with somebody. Oh. What was the hospital saying all this time?
Okay, so the ENT doctors apparently didn't have any say when it comes to the theater. So until the theater guys said they are ready, they can't do anything. And that was one major problem I saw there. I mean, there was no synergy amongst the different departments working. And I kept asking them, what's happening? I said, soon. From 2 o'clock till 8 p.m. And when they were ready for the operation, they sent the cleaner to come and pick my dad. And he was actually even gisting with a friend.
So he wasn't like a trained hospital ward or anything, he was a cleaner.
I couldn't believe my eyes. But at that point, the only thing on my mind was I just wanted to see my dad.
Of course, get well.
Get well. So,
Sure.
in fact, I had to beg him, please, can we hurry up? Got to where he would pick my dad. I'd even locked the gate. I had to beg them, please, can you open this place? We got there. In fact, it's one thing I observed is that when you take your family member to the hospitals in Nigeria, in government hospitals, you are practically the nurse because you are the one taking care of that person. I can't count the number of times I had to go meet the nurse. And, the 3 days I was there, it's a very, very painful experience because I'm also in the service sector and I know how we render service to our clients. But these guys do this because they spend more time gisting amongst themselves. I know how many times I had to go and meet a nurse like, this drip is finished. Are you not supposed to change it? It's crazy. So we get in there and we finally put him on the stretcher with the cleaner. Mm-hmm. Now, it's hospital policy that a nurse is actually supposed to accompany him from that unit to the theater. Okay. We had almost gone halfway when the cleaner says, I can't go beyond this point because I will get sanctioned if I get there without the nurse. And I was like, okay, so where is the nurse that's supposed to go with us? She was there talking. In fact, I was my younger brother. He lost it at that point. Had to yell at her, and she catwalked to come and meet us. And at this point, they had taken my dad off oxygen. So he was without oxygen.
But he needed it?
That's what he had been using all the while. Okay. And so by the time we got to the theater, the first thing I did was, actually, he got there, dumped my dad like a piece of meat somewhere, and yelled in Yoruba, the patient is here. And it took like maybe 2 minutes before anybody could come out. And I begged them, and 2 of them came out, matrons. And I said, please, can you please place him on oxygen? Because we took him off oxygen. And he needs this oxygen to breathe. And one of them, mockingly, said to me, junior doctor, what do you know? And
she said that?
Oh, yes. And at this time, I'd even paid for the procedure.
Yes.
At the ENT division. And they were like, have you paid? And I said, yes, I've paid. And they're like, well, you have to pay here, not there. And at this point, I didn't mind because, thank God,
you just wanted him
at least I can afford
He was
it.
close to the theater now.
So I could afford it. I was like, okay, do you know what? Give me, I will pay for it. That's not the problem. And after writing the receipt, she looks at him and like, oh, he even has beards. Why did you bring him here with beards?
What? He had stubble because he hadn't shaved?
Yeah, he hadn't shaved for a few days.
Did anybody tell you he had to shave?
Of course not.
Okay.
I'm like, how on earth am I supposed to know he's not supposed to have beards for this?
So what did you have to do?
So they says, better go and buy shaving stick. This was at past 8 in the evening. Well,
so he'd already been waiting, I think, about 6 hours.
Before the procedure, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
So you got there, first of all, it was locked. He was off oxygen. I assume he was still in pain.
Yeah.
And then when you were asked to pay again,
yeah.
And then just when you thought that was it, you now were told he was unshaven and you had to go and buy razor blades at 8 p.m. at night.
Past 8 p.m.
More or less 6 hours afterwards.
Yeah.
Look, let's hold it right there. We need to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Heart of the Matter, where today we're talking with Ekene about the blog that you captioned, the death camps called government hospitals in Nigeria. And you've been telling us what I can only describe as a really heart-wrenching, tearful story about your dad's situation. So far, he had been in the hospital already for 6 hours. He had not eaten. He was in pain, taken off oxygen when he needed the oxygen. And just when you thought he was about to get into theater, you had to pay all over again. And then you were told because he had stubble, because he hadn't shaven all this time, you now had to go buy shaving sticks. We took a break then, but tell us the rest of the story.
Okay, so at this point, my brother dashed out I don't know where he got shaving sticks. He managed to get. And Lily said, okay. And this time he was still without oxygen. And while trying to shave, she was like, oh, this one is not even that sharp. You need to get another one. But for some reason, after a while, we got him in, and we were like, I mean, a huge sigh of relief. Like, thank God he's in. At least he would get off pain. So after like 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, one of the doctors rushed out. I was like, we can't do this operation today. By the time we got him in, we found that his oxygen level was 0. At this point, I lost it because I told him, but we all knew that he was without oxygen all this while. Why didn't you guys put him on oxygen immediately we arrived? So we rushed back there, and they had wheeled him out, now without oxygen. So we're like, okay, can you at least give us this mobile oxygen so that we can use back to the medical emergencies? And the nurse told us, which one did we bring when we were coming?
Oh, my goodness. No, you are joking.
No, I'm dead serious. I wish it was fiction. But this happened right before my very eyes. And even right there, they were even arguing amongst themselves about something. In fact, the guy even wheeling him out was not even watching. His arm got stuck at the door. In fact, he almost broke his arm. We had to can't you look? Before we could even. So I was like, let's just wheel him back. Getting back to the medical emergencies unit, they had even locked the gate. And we were begging the guy, please open this thing. And the gate man even started yelling at us that why are we even talking to him with respect? And it took him a while. By the time he opened the gate and go in, he had passed on at that point. And that was when they started bringing out the oxygen and doctors rushing and everything. By that time, he was
gone.
He was gone.
I'm really sorry to hear that.
Well,
and I'm sure that our audience is as well. I mean, this must make you angry, bitter, hurt, sad. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, but sadly, that's the experience of the average Nigerian that visits government hospitals, even till today.
And you don't think maybe this was just an isolated, just a terribly bad isolated case?
Of course not. You know the even funny part is that LASUT actually has one of the best services when it comes to government hospitals. So if you feel LASUT is bad, just try and visit places like Relay, and they're not talking about outside Lagos. I mean, it's difficult to believe that people visit these places because this is their last resort. I mean, how many people can afford private hospitals? And for me, it was also new because I don't visit government hospitals. We were told that there was this specialist, and that's why we went. My 3 days there, I saw people die like it was in fashion. These were people that you would have a conversation with not long before that time. Someone said to me, this is the reason why some people would rather just die in their homes than visit government hospitals. But the question is, for how long are we going to continue like this?
And in fact, in your blog, you told the story of a little boy.
Yeah. There was this guy. His bed was just 2 beds from my dad, and he was constantly in pain. He was just about 8 years old, and a lot of times I would go meet the nurses like, this guy is in pain, and they would tell me, don't mind him, and I remember going home and next morning, and I didn't see the parents and anyone there. So I asked my mom, because my mom would she had no choice, she has told her husband. And I was like, what happened to this guy? And she was like, well, he died last night. I couldn't believe it. And all this guy needed was blood transfusion.
I guess perhaps that is corroboration that your dad's situation wasn't in isolation.
Oh, no. We got some of the best. Even there, we got some, because I was constantly on my feet, and we got some of the best service from the nurses and the doctors. Sure. So, this is...
And it's interesting, because when I read your blog, obviously, this is not a nice story. It's something that hurts a lot. But you still took the time to recognize that there were some medical practitioners in that establishment that... gave their very all. But it's interesting how you coined it. You said, but it's difficult to see their good efforts in a sea of wickedness. So it's as if, you've got some people trying hard, but you seem to feel the entire system around that simply doesn't work. Yeah. Now, what I commend you on is, even though this is really tough, you seem to have gotten yourself together. And I know that the story about your dad's passing and the way all of this happened in the hospital is just a part of it. You are looking at this beyond him. And let's hope that the memory of your father can now be something positive. And I want us to now move into that, because clearly this type of situation is something that really ought not to recur. And I think you've indicated, if a lot of Nigerians are going through this, many Nigerians can't afford maybe to go to private hospitals or to pay for HMOs, and so that it gives them access to private health care. So I can't tell you what percentage, but it must be certainly over the vast majority of Nigerians having to go through this way. So it's about how do we change the circumstances for them. And looking through your blog, you've basically called to action, and you're saying things have to change. So I'd like us to talk, and you have like 8 points, which you think are necessary. So why don't we start? If I call them out, then you can deepen a little bit.
Okay.
The first one is reorientation in the health sector. What's all that about?
Because I realize that for most of the health workers, doctors and nurses, even the gatesmen and the cleaners, they had seen a lot of people die. It's not new to them.
So they're immune to it?
They are totally immune to it, and it affected the way they went about their business. To them, oh, he's dead. In fact, I haven't heard one at a point, not at lawsuits, but someone recounting their experience, telling me how they needed a bed and everywhere was full, and one of the nurses said, "Don't worry, someone was going to die, and you get it." And no, not one, 2 people actually told me that. I couldn't believe my ears. So these guys they are used to seeing people die. So it doesn't mean anything to them.
Yeah, well, certainly we need to, reorientate people, because you don't want to feel like you walk in there and that's the end of it. I mean, I'd like to think people go into hospitals with a good chance of walking out alive, hale and hearty, as opposed to that's the end of it. And then your second recommendation is about creating a quality assurance unit. What's that going to achieve?
Oh, I mean, because if these nurses knew that someone was watching them and they could get penalized for this kind of things, they would act right. I want to believe, just like we do in our companies. And when people are being constantly monitored, especially in Nigeria, sadly, sad to say, that employees really need to be monitored, because if you just leave them, they will hardly do their job. Sadly, at Lasut, there is this monitoring unit that they have.
So what does it do?
They just come and gist to the nurses, actually. They don't do anything. So if we have if we have a group of people that are not part of the hospital system that monitor these things and see that, and not just that, but if patients knew that there was a body or a group of people that they could report some of these things to, and these nurses and doctors could get sanctioned, I believe that they will do their jobs better than they do. Now,
again, I know that, this is a very painful subject to deal with. I know that the story of your dad is still incredible. I'm still struggling to understand it. I read the blog before, but even listening to you talking about it on air, I'm still baffled. But I'm struggling also with something else, that people, whether they are lackadaisical or otherwise, would know that people are coming in there and they could very well lose their lives, and they act like they don't care. Could there be other things? You're talking about government hospitals, and we know the situation with government establishments generally. There's a lack of, budgetary resources and other things. I don't know if there are issues around leadership. It's not really for me to say, because I don't have any direct experience there. But do you think maybe there are other factors as opposed to they don't care?
Well, some of the things I observed was the fact that they were largely understaffed.
Okay.
And from their conversations, they talk about pay. But one thing I often say is, how much does it cost to show care? I mean, even because we bought everything. I mean, it's not like the hospital didn't give us anything. Everything we used. I know you hear in some quarters, they say when you come to Lagos State government hospitals, you don't pay for this. The only thing we didn't pay for was HIV test. Every other thing to the last pin we paid for.
Okay.
So we're not saying you didn't give us anything.
So you're saying I paid, give me the service I paid for.
Just give us the service.
I hear you. And I'm sure I know there are things already that you're trying to do, and we'll talk about those later. But with the time we have left, I also want to maybe pick one or two of the other issues that you raised. We can't go through all of them.
Okay.
You talked about interdepartmental collaboration. Why is that important?
You know, during that whole process, we dealt with 3 departments: the medical emergencies unit, the ENT, and the theater. And one thing that I observed was that everyone played God. You know, nobody. It was as if there was a competition amongst themselves, and without realizing that they're supposed to be working together, actually. You know, so there was no synergy amongst them at all. You know, the theater would say, "Listen, until we're ready, you know what, don't disturb us," and blah, blah, blah. The guys, the ANC, took their time before they could attend to, the guys in the medical emergencies units were just gods on their own as well. They did whatever they wanted to do at their own time.
Sure.
And that was a big gap, really, if you ask me. And it's part of the reason why we have those deaths.
Okay. And the truth is that it's not just in hospitals. This happens, and I dare say, not only just in ministries. It happens even in businesses. And so I guess what we can see in this particular case is just how costly that can be.
Yeah.
One final point, or one of your last recommendations, is about effective leadership. What's wrong with the leadership in the hospital?
Yeah, I mean, if you ask how do we get our CMOs, the chief medical officers, it's based on the title you have to have written books, know a lot about the medical profession. But you see, when you get to leadership, it's less about how much you know about that subject, but how you can deal with people. At this point, you're dealing with people. Management is key. Your understanding of management is key, and not just how well you know about medicine. You know, so it's part of the things because I did a little bit of research, and I found that, I mean, if we had the right kind of leadership in these hospitals in terms of the CMOs, and they dealt with these patients like their customers, because I think one of the problems that we have with government hospitals is that they get funding from the government. So irrespective of how much they make as an institution, they will still get funding. But if they realize that their salaries were being paid, the money for the salary is being paid by these patients, and they see these patients as customers, I don't believe that they will treat them better. And all these things boils down to how well you can see it in terms of management. And probably I'm saying this because I'm an MBA student, but I've come to realize that leadership is key in terms of how things are structured.
Leadership is key to everything. And the only thing I'd probably add to that, I mean, I speak from the point of view of business, is that leadership is not just so much about the titles. I think leadership is anybody who is willing to do the right thing and, you know, to put the best foot forward and take us from where we are to where we need to get to. So, you know, let's pray that that will be also looked into. Now, time, of course, is unfortunately not on our side. All great conversations like this will come to an end. But in wrapping up, I want to focus on the call to action, because on your blog, you also ask people to start conversations, social media. Talk about that.
Yeah, so part of what I looked at was the fact that we don't value Nigerians. So we started a hashtag Value Nigerians, and we wanted people to share their story as well. Okay. You know, because let not be as though this is just an isolated case. Yeah. I wanted people to talk about their experiences. In my class alone, my class of about 60, we had over 20 people that had this kind of stories to tell about how they lost their sister or their mother, something like that. You know, so we wanted people to talk about it so that there can be a call to action. I won't believe that not just the Commissioner for Health in Lagos State, the Minister of Health, we also have a Senate committee in charge of health. Sure. You know, if all these people did their oversight functions, we won't believe that things would get better. We keep hearing about how nurses and doctors want to go on strike because they're not being paid well. But my own question is, how well are you even doing your job in the first place? You know, so we started this conversation in social media just to get people talking about it, because we believe if people talk about it, changes.
Sure, and of course you've got a Facebook handle, a Twitter handle, Instagram handle, which I know are being scrolled on screen anyway.
Yeah, everything is just Value Nigerians. We just want people to talk about it because we believe that it's when we talk about things that we begin to see the real change that because it would bring about the call to action.
Sure. And your website and blog, I know it's fairly new because you've only just laid your dad to rest.
Yeah.
And I expect that you're going to be building upon that as we go along.
Oh, yes.
And as you said, look, change needs to be sustainable. And one of the critical ways that change will take root is that you also don't give up raising the awareness.
Yeah.
Look, I think with that, we really come to the end of this program. And, our audience, I'm sure you've been just as touched and probably flabbergasted by what we've heard today as I've been. It's a really difficult one. It's really hard to say. And, I give a lot of credit to you, Ekene, for the way that you've handled this. And I trust the same will go also for your mother and your siblings. But, in closing, what I'd like to say is, and my strong prayer is that the life and the death of late Pa Peter Ekene Mekwunye will not go to waste, that this will awaken a consciousness at all levels in this country, in this society, and even beyond as the case may be, to ensure that healthcare is improved and that people don't walk into hospitals with an expectation of not coming out, but they go in with every expectation that they'll come out hale and hearty and healed. Thank you so much for your time, and stay blessed until next time.